What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. And as you can probably tell by, well, the intro, the title, the thumbnail, today we're going to be talking about Xaku. I know that Ureli Prime just came out, but this is something I've been working on and wanted to talk about for a while, so Ureli will be after this. But yeah, Xaku is one of my most played frames. I think my second most played frame, second only to Gorse, and that's because I just really like being fast. And we're just going to get straight into it. So shard-wise, I've got 2 Tau Strength Shards, 1 Tau Duration Shard, Particle Velocity, and Energy Max. I also do want to premise that I do have an Invigoration active for 100% range and 200% Energy Max. So my energy usually is around 400, not 800. And obviously your range is capped at 280, not 380. So this is affecting the performance of the frame slightly by giving me a maximum of 22 guns instead of 16. But it does not affect the damage per shot of the guns or anything like that, or the damage of any of my other abilities. So in practice, it's pretty much identical outside of having, you know, 6 extra guns. But yeah, let's talk about his abilities first. His passive is super simple. It just gives you a 20% damage reduction on AoE attacks, and you have a 25% chance to avoid incoming weapon damage. That's literally it. Super simple. His first ability, if I hadn't subsumed over it, is Xatu's Whisper. Let me switch to a different config just so we can see that. Here we go. So this is basically, on the surface, it just seems like a damage buff. You know, you pop it, you get void damage for your attacks while it's active. But the way Xatu's Whispers works is it applies an extra hit, essentially, as opposed to being a flat damage boost. It applies an extra hit, so it's sort of like pseudo multi-shot in a way. It's a strange ability. It has a lot of interactions with a lot of other things, but unfortunately on Xaku, after playing him for hundreds of hours, this is probably, and well, not even probably, this is his weakest skill, because Xatu's Whisper does not affect his guns from Grasp of Loak at all. And as you'll see later on, the whole point of Xaku, really, and the best way to play him is to remain invisible the whole time and allow his guns to do most of, like, well, all of the work. His guns have scaling damage, which we'll talk about what that means in a minute. But yeah, Xatu's Whisper, I do not use it, and I would not recommend keeping it on him. I would much recommend subsuming Raw over his one. It is by far his best subsume, in my opinion, because Raw is the only ability, the only subsume you can use that directly affects the damage that Grasp of Loak does. And with this build, you can easily reach around 100% Raw, which means basically double damage on your guns. So severely useful, and much better than Xatu's Whisper for this specific case. A lot of other frames use Xatu's Whisper better than Xaku does. Speaking of his guns, Grasp of Loak is also very simple. It basically just steals weapons from enemies nearby, and they float around you, auto-targeting enemies and shooting them. It says here damage output increases based on enemy level. We'll talk about what that means in a minute. And the number of weapons is determined by a range. So the more range you have, the more guns you have. So this is always going to be a max range build. His third ability, the Lost, is essentially 3 abilities in one: Accuse, Gaze, and Deny. For 99.999% of scenarios, you are only using Gaze, which is his defense strip. It's not an armor strip. Some people like to call it an armor strip. It is not an armor strip. It is a defense strip, meaning it will strip shields and armor alike. Does not matter. As long as you are at 100%, like I am here, all enemy armor, all enemy shields, gone. So it's useful in Corpus missions as well as armored missions like Grenier. It's less useful in Corpus because you can typically kill them through the shields anyways, because they don't have any damage reduction, but it's still worth pointing out that it is a defense reduction, a global defense reduction. Then we have the Vast Untime, his 4th ability. Now, this ability is the pinnacle of his kit, essentially. Whilst Vast Untime is active, the duration, or the countdown duration, of any of his other abilities, not including subsumes, are frozen. So whilst your 4 is active, your 2 and your 3 do not lose durability. They just freeze in place. So if you have 30 seconds left, they will stay at 30 seconds so long as his 4 is active. It also applies a slow to any enemies that are hit, and it also applies a damage vulnerability to the enemies, making them weaker specifically to void damage, which is the type of damage that Grasp of Loke does. So his 4 pauses the timer of his other abilities, it slows the enemies down, and it makes your guns do more damage. It also gives you an extra 75% dodge chance. Now, it is worth noting this isn't additive with the 25%, so it isn't 75% plus 25% giving you 100%. It is multiplicative, so it's like it's a further 75% on the remaining 75% left over from this. So no, you can't be 100% immune to can't get 100% dodge chance. But yeah, that's his abilities. As for the build, this is what we are rocking. This is something that I have toyed around with for a very long time. I've tried tons of iterations of builds. As you can see, I've got a Nourish build. I have an Aphanim Eyes set up for more mobile missions where you're not wanting to camp in one spot. This is just for looting, because it's another one of his useful traits, is his 4 can break containers, like all the containers on the map. Well, all the containers within 95 meters. So he's super useful for looting if you need Argon Crystals or Plastids or really any resource. You can just run through missions, spam casting his 4, and that's why we have such high efficiency. And this just makes sure that you can crack open all the containers and you get tons and tons and tons of loot. Actually, it's not 95 meters because I have an extra 100%. I think it's more like 75 or something like that. But this is my main build. I've taken this to level cap many times. It is my go-to for level cap. And the build is relatively straightforward. We have Brief Respite as the aura. It does not have to be Brief Respite. However, with Brief Respite on, with 45% efficiency, every time you cast your 4, and some of your other abilities for that matter, you will fully regenerate all of your 353 shields. So this just adds that additional layer of shield gating. It also works with the set bonus for Augur Reach as well. That gives you some more shield gating. But I like this. I find it's very comfortable. It means in a pickle, if you have no other choice, you can cast Brief Respite. If like Rolling Guard is on cooldown, for example, it is there. So there are other options you can pick. You could go for, if you don't really have any auras, you could go for Dreamer's Bond if you want, Energy Siphon if you want some more energy regen. You do not need Corrosive Projection because you're getting a 100% strip from Gaze anyways. You could go Growing Power if you wanted to use this before setting up your guns and your roar. You could shoot an enemy first, then cast your abilities. You could run a mecha set if you wanted. If you have a companion that works with that, you could throw this on. But other than that, there aren't really tons of great options, and I do think the Brief Respite is the best one. In our excellent slot, we have Cunning Drift for the extra range. There isn't really a way around this. There is no give on this build for Prime Sure-Footed, unfortunately. But 99% of the time, you're invisible, so it doesn't matter. Then we are obviously rocking Overextended, Stretch, and Augur Reach, getting us to the maximum 280% range. This is absolutely a must, a requirement. If you want Xaku to be the best that he can be, you need maximum range. You need all 4 of these mods on. Without these, you will not be able to get 16 guns. And that is super, super important. Next, we have Blind Rage. This makes up pretty much all of our ability strength, along with Umbral Intensify, and the aforementioned 2 Tower Forged Strength Shards. These get you to a nice, comfortable 213 strength. We're also then running Molt Augmented. This gives us an additional 60%. And if you run Madorai, which I would definitely recommend for any kind of level cap, or especially level cap Void Cascade because of the Thrax, it is Sling Strength over here. You want to get this max, and what this basically does, if I come out of here, is whenever I switch to my Operator and I Void Sling twice, which you can do pretty quickly, you'll see I get an additional 40% ability strength. So all in all, once more Augmented is stacked up, there's over 300% ability strength. which is super nice. That gives you a very powerful raw around 100%. It makes sure your guns are doing good base damage that allows them to scale well. And it makes sure that the slow is as close to 75%, which is the cap, I believe. Oh, no, it's not the cap. It isn't cap, sorry. But it makes sure the slow is really high. The really high percent, which does help. We're then also running Prime Continuity, just for a little bit of duration, with that other 1 tower duration shard. And this is probably the flex slot. So I like Energy Nexus here, because if you do the math on this, the duration of my 4 is 42 seconds. So if we just take 40 seconds as an example, Energy Nexus gives us 3 energy a second, which means whilst we're in fast on time, for that 40 seconds we're in this, we regenerate 120 energy, which is almost enough to recast the fast on time. And you'll have probably picked up 1 energy orb in 42.5 seconds. This essentially gives you infinite uptime on his 4, meaning that you aren't running out of energy and panicking, not being able to recast his 4 to maintain the cooldown of your, or the duration of your 2 and 3. I am running Arcade Energize on top of this. This isn't 100% necessary. There's just not many other great options here. You could go for... where is it? Arcane Crepuscular. This gives you another 30% ability strength while invisible, which you will be most of the time. So if you want a tiny bit more strength, you could do this. You could also go for... let's see. Where is it? You could also go for Molt Efficiency for a little more duration. If you wanted, this is another good option. But I run Arcane Energize just for the bonus chunk of energy every now and again. It is very useful. And this also does give it to your teammates, so there's that. Other options, if you're not wanting to run Energy Nexus, is keeping Energize on and switching it out for Equilibrium. This is another good option. This gives you health pickups giving energy and energy pickups giving health. So that's another option if you want. But other than that, there really is not much flexibility on this build. I believe you can drop a little bit of this strength. I can't remember what I think it's 168 or something you need to get for Gaze to get a full defense reduction with if you run Corrosive Protection up here. But overall, after a lot of testing, this is really what I would recommend. This is a lot of testing, a lot of kills, a lot of time in level cap. This is the build to go for. Then, other than that, you might be wondering, why am I not using a melee? Why am I not using a primary? This is specifically for endurance runs, like level cap Void Cascade, or the one on Lure, the survival on Lure. When you're cracking relics, you get every time you crack a relic, you get, or rather, whenever you collect 10 reactor, you get a buff, a random buff. And that can either be infinite primary damage, infinite primary ammo, more damage, infinite secondary ammo, more damage, melee damage, ability range, double affinity. There's a couple of options. But by making sure that I'm only running a secondary, I'm taking the other ones out the equation, because it cannot give me the buff for the primary weapon when I'm not using a primary weapon. Cannot give me the buff for the melee weapon when I'm not using a melee weapon. So it basically has less to choose from, meaning I get the double range and strength way more often, which is super useful for Xaku because you can snapshot that, which essentially means when you get that double strength buff and double range buff, you can hold cast your 4 to cancel it, let your guns run out, recast your abilities, you'll get double the amount of guns, so 32 at max range. Sorry, 33, because it spills over a little bit, it rounds up. That then gives you 33 guns that you can then use your 4 to pause the timer on that. So even after the double strength and range buff goes away, those double strength and range guns remain there until they run out of duration, which you can make them last for a very long time by using your 4 constantly on cooldown. And then usually I find by the time this finally does run out, I have another double range and strength buff ready to refresh it. Other than that, the most important thing is a Harass Hubrau. You can get away with using Shade. He will also make you invisible. However, Shade will not attack while invisible, whereas Harass Kubrau's will. Both of them are still fine options, but this is the build I run on my Harass Kubrau, the most important mod obviously being Stalk, and this essentially just gives you permanent invisibility so long as you are near enemies, which you will be most of the time. This also counts enemies chained up by your gaze, so you can stand near your enemies that have been locked down to be an armor strip or a defense strip, and they will activate Stalk as well. Then we just have your typical Contagious Bond, Momentous Bond, Resourceful Retriever, super useful, Mecha Recharge, Animal Instinct, Loyal Companion, because I didn't know what else to put here, You might be wondering why I'm not running things like Reinforced Bond or Tenacious Bond. I'm not using weapons, so these two are completely irrelevant for me. And then we have a bit of survivability here. As for my claws, it is a pretty standard Burning Claws build. It's essentially just stacking up a ton of damage, ton of heat damage, Cool Weak for more melee damage on status affected targets, and so on. And this can easily wipe out rooms. Easily. You know, one hit from this, if I get a heat proc and contagious bonds procs, it will just spread the heat procs to all enemies. You can also run elusive posture if you wanted to avoid, if you wanted to make sure your companion lives longer, because they sometimes can get killed by like AoE attacks like Blitz Eximmerse and things like that, because you're not invincible while invisible. You still get hit by AoE attacks. But yeah, that is you 100% need this. There is no two ways about it. Your survivability is infinitely better, especially in level cap, if you could just be invisible the whole time. But yeah, let's talk about the scaling damage. So, scaling damage basically means this. Let me clear these enemies, and let's get a corrupted heavy gunner. We'll go for one of these, and we'll go for level... We'll do level 1, and we're going to take the steel path off. In fact, it doesn't matter if the steel path is on. I'm going to quickly take my companion off, just so he doesn't kill it. But you'll notice this enemy is level 1. If I pull a gun off this enemy, my gun is doing 65 damage a shot. If I pull another gun, 65 damage a shot. And it will never go above 65 damage. It just shoots more often. Let me just get rid of my guns. Now, if I come in here, and I change the enemy level to 225, and I come over here, and I pull a gun, the damage is doing 2.4k. That is because, as the enemy level increases, their damage increases. So their weapon damage increases, which means when you pull a gun off the enemy, your gun does a respective amount of damage based off that. So it essentially means that no matter what level content you're in, you will continue to do more and more and more damage, scaling with the enemy level. So you'll never reach a point where you cannot kill enemies. In fact, a fun tip about Xaku is he actually gets stronger the higher level the enemies are, because for those of you that don't know, enemy weapon damage, so the damage that enemies deal, scales faster and increases quicker than enemy health does. Which means that once you get to level 9999 enemies, their damage output greatly exceeds their health. Which means when you pull the guns off them, you'll essentially just be able to one-shot the enemies, even while they're fully armored. It is extremely, extremely, extremely strong. But yeah, that is the build. So, I already showed some gameplay at the beginning, so I'm not going to show any now. But that is my Xaku build. Please go and try him. He is by far one of the strongest frames in the game. If anything, he is the strongest frame in the game. There are a lot of good options, like Sevagoth is also really strong, but Xaku is so good. Please go and try him out. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoy the build. If you do, let me know down below. Let me know if you've got any suggestions. Let me know if you guys run something a little different. Really interested to see your guys' feedback. And let me know what you think about the intro for this video. I tried something a little different. And yeah, hopefully you guys have a great day, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Adios.